Okay, by 1938, Hitler has beaten down his enemies on the left, the communists, the socialists, again with Stalin's help, because Stalin didn't let any leftists, he didn't let the Communist Party in Germany align with any other leftist parties. So Hitler faced a very fragmented left in Germany. It's unclear if the leftists would have been able to stop Hitler anyway, but Stalin helped. And then he's also beaten down his own internal enemies, the stormtroopers, who are even crazier than he is in many ways. The running rampage in German cities. But as I just talked about, he decapitates the head of the SA, Rom, and Hitler basically gains control over the stormtroopers. He sidelines them, he defangs them. That's another way of putting it. Decapitates the leadership. And then at the same time, he gains the support of the German army, German industrialists, the big agricultural sectors of Germany as well, and the majority of the German people who didn't like the SA, who were frightened of the SA. And Hitler is the guy that has put down the SA. So Hitler's very popular. The economy is bouncing back. He's spending a lot of money on the military, the militarization of Germany. He's creating jobs by doing so, which of course makes him more popular. His speeches resonate with Germans about how terrible the Versailles Treaty was and the stab in the back theory, and how the fear of communism, that Stalin is the great enemy. And Hitler now can turn his attention by 38 to his old nemesis, his original nemesis in many ways, the folks in Germany that are Jewish. Now, Hitler had, as soon as he became chancellor and then started seizing step by step complete control of power in Germany, he had, even before 1938, had established policies and created policies that alienated Jewish folks in Germany and subjected them to persecution. All businesses were boycotted by Nazis and other Germans. Remember, it's worth repeating because I think a lot of folks don't understand this. Right around 1% of Germans' population was Jewish. So we're talking about a very, very small minority of Germans. Most of the Jews that Hitler murders are in Poland. They're not in Germany. And they don't come under control of Germany until after World War II starts. Jews are dismissed from civil service posts. There are burning of books that are written by Jewish authors. Jewish businesses German businesses refuse to serve Jews as well. The Nuremberg laws, passed in September 1935, decreed that only Aryans could be full German citizens. It became illegal. If you were Aryan, it became illegal for you to marry someone who was Jewish, or even to have extramarital intercourse with someone that was Jewish. So Hitler, as he consolidates power in Germany, there's a steady increase in the pressure on Jews. Now, many Jewish Germans leave Germany at the time, but others stay. They just kind of can't believe what's going on. They think it's got to stop at some point. Many Jews had fought, especially German men who were Jewish, had fought in World War I. They were patriotic Jews. Germany was their home. They weren't willing to leave. It was just kind of, they couldn't believe what was happening. Jewish students weren't allowed to go to college. You had to carry an ID card if you were Jewish. And so all this came to a head on November 9th and November 10th, 1938. And that is the incident which is known as Kristallnacht, which is the night of crystal, the night of broken glass, really. And what you had in that horrible incident was that synagogues were torched, Jews were killed, up to 100 Jews were killed, um, Jewish businesses were vandalized. What I have up on my map here, on my screen here, is a map of Germany that shows all the synagogues in Germany, cities in which synagogues were burned down. And what had happened is that Hitler had planned, and his henchmen had planned to have this very, very dramatic and violent and horrible display against Jewish folks in Germany. And on November 7th, 1938, you don't have to remember this, the November 7th part, a Polish Jew shot a German diplomat in Paris. And what happened is the Nazi government used this incident as an excuse to fan the flames of anti-Semitism. The propaganda minister for Hitler, Joseph Goebbels, delivered a speech. He said that the attack on the German diplomat in Paris was the fault of the Jews, and suggested that the German government, German police would do nothing. They'd stand by if there were reprisals against Jewish people in Germany. So the Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass, to give you some figures here, 7,500 Jewish-owned stores were broken into. They were looted. Apparently 1,000 synagogues were burned over these 2 nights in November of 1938. And what we had with Kristallnacht is a vision of what we're going to see in the Holocaust. But I have to remind you, we're not at the Holocaust yet. Now, there have been what were called concentrations that have been created not only for Jews, but for Hitler's other enemies as well, including some Aryans. But we don't have the death camps. We don't have the mass murders. The mass murders of Jews and other folks is a product of World War II, especially the invasion of the Soviet Union. We start to see the mass murder in Poland, but it's really the invasion of the Soviet Union when we get the Holocaust, what we think of the Holocaust, which came in 2 parts, mass execution by murder by guns, and then the creation of the death camp, mass execution by gassing. So 1938, a turning point. Well, maybe that's not the right metaphor. What we have is it's an acceleration of the anti-Jewish situation in Germany, which had not been good since Hitler came into power, but is even getting worse. And right now we're about a year, almost exactly a year from Hitler's invasion of Poland, where the mass killing of Jews begins, and then it even increases exponentially in 1940 when the Nazis invade the Soviet Union. Now, one of the things I think that a lot of students find interesting is that Hitler thought, remember, only about 0.5% of the Jewish population, of the German population, was Jewish. Most of the Jews that Hitler killed were not Jewish. They're Poland, Russian, Ukrainian, Hungarian. And there was some thinking in Germany before the World War II starts, and it starts in September 1939, that Jews in Germany could be forced to leave Germany, forced immigration, into Madagascar, which is an island off the west, let's see, it's in the Indian Ocean, off the coast of Africa. And Madagascar was controlled by the French, but there was some real thinking among Nazi leadership. Their game plan was always to make sure that Germany become Aryan only, the master race only. But this underlines one of the points that I want to make in this class about how the Holocaust, getting rid of folks of Jewish descent was always Hitler's game plan, but the form it took was not in place when Hitler comes into power in the 1930s. Even as late as 1938, it's still not in place. Certainly, it's miserable to be Jewish in Germany. You've had your citizenship rights stripped away from you. It's very, very dangerous. But the mass murders haven't started. And so there is talk about rounding up folks of Jewish descent and forcing them, confiscating their money, taking all their money, taking all their possessions, and then forcing them to go to the island of Madagascar off the coast of Africa. There's some talk about this among high German circles. This report leaks out, and it causes a big hubbub, and ultimately nothing happens. Nothing comes of it. The Madagascar plan, the so-called Madagascar plan, never comes to fruition or anything close to it. It's a little side note in history. It's a kind of an interesting, I mean, I say interesting. We're talking about this, this horrible event. But it just shows that Hitler and his top henchmen aren't quite sure what to do. The one thing they want is they want Germany to be Aryan, and they're not quite sure how to make it Aryan, and they're not dealing with a big population until the invasion of Poland, and of course then everything changes. So it just goes to show that they haven't quite thought through Hitler's plans of eliminating Jews from Germany as late as 1938. And then beginning with the invasion of Poland, it's a whole nother situation, and millions of Jews tragically come under the sinister and vicious and murderous arm of the German government. So the Madagascar plan, who would have thought? But once again, it just shows that the Holocaust as it occurred was something that evolved over time. And I've said this a lot, that Hitler didn't have a game plan when he comes into power. And it becomes radicalized after Jews come under the control of the German army after the beginning of World War I. First, the invasion of Poland in September of 1939, and then the invasion of the Soviet Union. So it's a radicalization and a move towards what we think about when we think about the Holocaust.